He is the Celestial with a lot of opinions. We're talking about Arishem. Hi, my name's Nando. In this series, I take a character from Marvel Comics, talk about their background, their power set, their personality, and give you some reading recommendations. And this is all because this week this character is getting introduced in the collectible card game Marvel Snap. So if you've always wondered about this character or the race that this character is part of, the Celestials, that's most of the video. At the end, we're going to talk Marvel Snap stuff, and at the end of that, we'll talk about a little bit of extra stuff that I wanted to throw on here, because the thing about Arishem, the thing about the Celestials generally is, unlike a lot of the other characters we've talked about up until this point, they're not like actual characters. They are concepts, and they show up and do a thing, but they don't talk. All right, that's not necessarily true. One of them talks, but most of them don't talk. And if they do, they just come up and say, "Hi, I'm the one that is this. We're going to do this. Begin." All right, so here's the origin for the Celestials. It is weird, but you stick with me and I think you'll get it. The Marvel Universe in the comics, 616, whatever you want to call it, has been destroyed and recreated multiple times. At the end of the Secret Wars event, the one from 2015, it was destroyed and recreated again. Right, so we learned after that comic event from another comic called The Ultimates that's very good. That's where the Infinite is from, everybody who loves him from Marvel Snap. Al Ewing went and really opened up a lot of the mythology about the creation of the Marvel Universe. This is what happens. Back in the, day zero, or whatever we're calling this, there is the one above all, and he creates what is called the first firmament. And this is the first universe. And this is just like a living universe that's just there and alone and bored. So this first firmament creates two kinds of beings. The first is the aspirants, these big black figures, and then the second are the Celestials. These are more colorful versions of those characters. The aspirants want to keep everything going the way that the first firmament has set it up. The Celestials are like, no, we need to do weird stuff. We need to kill you guys and, create new universes. That way things can grow, because the Celestials are all about propagating life, changing energy into other energy. I wouldn't say they have personalities the same way that like Thanos has a personality, where it's like he's doing what he wants to because he wants to do it, because he has some sort of motive that's driving it. These guys just do the thing that they do. They're almost like robots created to do that. So the Celestials wanted to be more creative, experiment. The aspirants wanted to enforce the will of the first firmament, and that created a war between those two groups of super beings. And at this point, like, that's all there was. So these guys all just fought. The aspirants apparently made a sick armor that they fought over, I guess, amongst themselves. The aspirants had their own little civil war. They died. They don't exist anymore. The Celestials won. So then universe is destroyed, but the Celestials stick around and they go to new universes. They go to the Ultimate Universe. They go to 616 and they start creating life or doing whatever it is they do, because each Celestial usually has a name and a job. So for instance, we're going to be talking about Arishem, the Judge. He is one of the most high-profile Celestials. Really, the only one I would say that's higher profile than him is Tiamat, the Dreaming Celestial, who we've talked about in Eternal stuff and who shows up in the Eternals movie as well. But Arishem, I would say, is the highest profile Celestial. But like time passes, we don't know exactly what happened in every iteration of the Marvel Universe. A couple things that the Celestials are responsible for. Apocalypse builds his armor and like some of his machinery out of a crashed Celestial ship and makes a bargain with the Celestials, so they are part of the Apocalypse story. And of course, the Celestials create the Eternals. So they're doing experiments with life on Earth. They take, proto-humans, they create humans, deviants, and Eternals, monster guys, super guys, and normal people. And they ask, can 100 super beings fight a bazillion monster guys? That's the basic story of what the Eternals were, at least when they were created, what they thought they were supposed to do. One other thing that they did that was interesting. So we are on the 8th, I believe, currently, version of the Marvel Universe. The 7th version of the Marvel Universe was one inhabited by the being Null, who was like the symbiote god. And the Celestials basically were like, all right, well, you gotta go. And Null was like, absolutely not. I'm making a sword. I'm killing as many of you as I can. And that was the story of Null. And then we learned that the Celestials were actually trying to recruit him to be something called the King in Black, which it seems like we're probably getting a symbiote season eventually. We'll talk about that then. But either way, that's what the Celestials do. And they're kind of working behind the scenes, messing around, doing experiments, creating life, creating universes. That's their power. They can create energy, which is cool. Arishem works more or less as a judge. She shows up to decide whether a planet should continue to exist or not. It takes about 50 years to do that, but he shows up to the planet and then either get the thumbs up or the thumbs down. That iconography shows up on some of the variants for Arishem, and that is how you know how your judgment went. A couple of times, Arishem specifically, I wouldn't say Like, he's a Celestial, so they don't have like nemesises or something. If there's a certain person that Arishem hates, it's Scott Summers, because Scott Summers has on multiple occasions bodied Arishem. The first time they met up was during X Factor 50. This is the original version of X Factor. Scott, Gene, Bobby, Hank, and Warren on their new team. So Arishem shows up, and Jean Grey, who used to kind of be Phoenix but isn't anymore, is like, I don't use Phoenix powers anymore, but I will kill you with Phoenix powers if you don't leave. And Scott's like, you know what? If I do an optic blast, you can Phoenix that up, and then that'll probably stop the Arishem guy. And what they do is they blow his hand off using a Phoenix imbued optic blast. The Celestials just leave. They're like, man, we were really excited about this whole thumbs up, thumbs down thing, and since we can't do that, why bother? One of the other times Scott interacted with them was during the very beginning of the Kieran Gillen run. This was the Uncanny X-Men story where Sinister tried to take over the Dreaming Celestial and use it to do Mr. Sinister stuff. At the end of that book, the Celestials all show up, and they're like, all right, well, you guys have been messing around, and you almost got the Dreaming Celestial stolen, so we're gonna have to destroy you guys, pretty much. I don't even know if they say that, but they just show up, and it's like, oh, that's what they mean. And Scott's like, absolutely not. We saved the Dreaming Celestial. We're good. You guys can go. And they leave, and everybody's like, whew, that was scary. And Scott's like, yeah, you know, you just gotta be firm with the Celestials, and they do what you tell them, I guess. And then the third version of this is during the Axe storyline, Avengers, X-Men, Eternals. Every individual character in Marvel Comics is getting judged. Now, the judgments are never, it's not very clear what a judgment means. So it's not like, are you a good person or a bad person, or are you strong or weak or whatever, but characters are just getting judgment. And certain characters take that differently. Some really care about what their judgment is. Some are like, I'm Dr. Doom. I don't give a shit about what you guys are doing. And one, Cyclops, is like, hey man, I only get judged by Jean Grey. So if you don't give me thumbs up, I'm going to send her over to you. And I don't know if you remember X Factor 50, but it did not go well. And then gives Scott the thumbs up, and he's like, cool. It's pretty funny. I don't know if there's a specific reason why Scott and Arishem just like don't get along. And part of it is just Scott has a really strong will, and Arishem is judging whether or not, you know, this civilization, this planet is worth maintaining. And Scott's like, it is. And the Celestial just kind of has to go with it. It's cool. One thing that's worth noting, I've talked a lot about the Judgment Day event in Marvel Comics between the Avengers, X-Men, and the Eternals. Great event crossing over all of those stories. There is a Celestial that shows up and does the thumbs up, thumbs down judgment thing. It is technically not Arishem. It's a different Celestial named the Progenitor. One thing is like Arishem is red and the Progenitor is not red. Doesn't really look like the other Celestials, but it's doing the Arishem thing. It's judging whether humanity gets to survive or not. So yeah, it doesn't really, Arishem doesn't have a personality. None of the Celestials do, except for the Dreaming Celestial, who's a little bit rebellious. And overall, the Celestials were rebellious because they wanted to do more experiments than the first firmament wanted them to. But otherwise, they don't really have the same kind of distinctions as other characters that are similar, like the Elders of the Universe, for example, who are similar characters that like embody a different thing, like the Grandmaster, the Collector. Like, they have personalities. These guys really don't. The other thing, power-wise, are they more powerful than Galactus? They're kind of the same. I'm honestly not sure where they rank, but for all intents and purposes, like they're basically the local Galactuses. And they can be killed. People have killed Celestials many times. It's hard, but you can do it. The Nowhere is the head of a dead Celestial, and that Celestial is one that Noel cut the head off of. So yeah, like if you put your mind to it, you can kill a Celestial. In Marvel Snap, Arishem is a 7-cost 7 power with the card text at the start of the game, +1 max energy, shuffle 12 random cards into your deck. So I think what you could say about why Arishem works this way, A, he's a 7 cost, which is very powerful. It's very expensive. You're probably not going to play him, mostly because like by the end of the game, when you would have 7 power, you probably have something better than 7 cost to play. I would say the idea behind Arishem is about experimentation, right? Arishem, the other Celestials, they wanted to try new things. They wanted to create life, destroy life, mess around. And that's really what the Arishem decks are going to do in theory. You're going to put a set amount of cards in that you want that are like the really solid cards for any deck, and then you're just going to Arishem it up, and he's going to throw 12 new cards in there, and maybe those cards will work really well together, and you'll come up with a new strategy, I guess. That's probably what they're hoping for. I would imagine it's just going to be kind of this weird, chaotic thing, because, I mean, the problem with Arishem is, realistically, getting 1 more power is nice, but, like, it's not that great compared to, like, there's other cards that do that there's Electro, there's Corvus Glaive, and those are both on turn 3, and there's like a downside, but it's also something you can easily negate, whereas, you know, having a bunch of random cards in your deck that might not be helpful, that could be pretty bad. It's going to do really poorly with like Darkhawk cards like that. I do think one card that I'm curious to see play around with Arishem is Cersei, because Arishem's going to be able to put a lot of cards onto the board, and Cersei's going to be able to really bump some maybe high cost cards up even higher. I feel like those cards will probably work well together. I don't know, Gilgamesh is a maybe, Phastos probably, Mercari not really anything super special, Athena probably not, because you'll probably want to play a lot of cards. Galactus, I would say, wouldn't work particularly well with Celestial. Darkhawk is going to destroy Celestials. I keep saying Celestials, Arishem Celestial, you know what I mean. Blob will be interesting with Arishem because hypothetically you could put a lot of high power cards in there, blob it, and then there's still cards left, right? He doesn't eat your whole deck anymore, he eats a bunch of it, but like if we're putting 12 extra cards in, there's some space. Do I think this card is a great card? Not really. I think it's interesting. It might be fun, but I don't know if it's going to change the meta. One thing I will say, this is the card that came out this season with a lot of nice variants, so that's what we should be doing. And you know what? They did put out some fun Eternals variants and like plain clothes, so that's good too. But yeah, I'd say this Arishem card seems to be the one that they have a couple of variants for right off the bat that I think are all pretty good. Is one last thing that I want to get at here in the Arishem video, because originally in plan for it to be super long, because it's like this guy doesn't have as much history as a character like, I don't know, Hercules or something. But it did bring up a question that I've heard people asked in different groups, and even asked the Marvel Snap people. It's like, where are some of these cards? Obviously, you know, it's great that we got Gilgamesh and Athena and stuff, but where's Icarus? You know, where's Kingo? Where's Druid? Where are the other Eternals that we know from the movie? And apparently, according to the Marvel Snap, like second dinner people, they're coming, and potentially in a second Eternal season, which I'm surprised we'll be doing that, but sure. And thinking about that, because it's like there are all these other Eternals that would make sense in this season. There's someone that helps me out writing my videos. His name's Bernardo. He actually had some ideas for future Eternals cards, so I would assume they probably figured out what some of these guys are in Marvel Snap. Like they already have at least a vague idea of what they're gonna do. But if they don't, these would be good answers. But I do want to throw these out there because I think they're kind of cool. These are 4 of them that could be used. It starts with Icarus. Okay. I'm going to read directly what he said in his notes here. Icarus. He is called the arrow of the Eternals. In some runs, he acts quickly and in a powerful way. That's true. He's like impulsive, and he gets business done. Bit of a Superman counterpart, but I also wanted to play with the mythology aspect of it. So it is a card. He would be a 5 energy, 4 power on reveal. Gain +4 power for every opponent's card here. If it gets to 16, destroy this card. So that's kind of fun, right? Like he's got the very strong, like he can be a very, very powerful card, but on the other hand, he can fly too close to the sun, like Icarus, and then explode and die. Like I like cards and I like superheroes where they can do a lot of cool stuff, but there is one drawback that is holding them back, and that would be the one for Icarus. Next one, we got Sprite. Sprite is a trickster and master of illusions. Her power might seem premium, especially if she appears as an Iceman or a Spider-Ham, but not only it makes her card vulnerable to Killmonger, it also can appear as Ebony Maw, Bast, or Squirrel Girl, which can mess up your game plan. But basically, this one would be a 2-cost 5 power with the text appear as a random 1-cost card. So it's kind of like Mysterio, another illusion character. I think that one speaks for itself. It could be fun. I think it would be another card that like you would think you're done with the game. You'd be like, all right, well, I guess I won. And then a Sprite would show up. I'm surprised Marvel doesn't have a character that does that yet, that pretends to be another card, because you've had a couple of characters that are shapeshifters, like Mystique. We'll have Copycat soon, but they all copy a card's ability. The only time we have a card that does this is Mysterio. Even with Mysterio, you know Mysterio's there. Sprite you wouldn't even know Sprite's in play. So that could be cool. Next up, this is a mechanic I never thought about before, but I think it's pretty fun. So this is Kingo. I think this one's pretty cool. This one would be a more straightforward and use his movie counterpart, which makes sense. The Camille Nanjiani Kingo is very different. Like they gave, some of these guys have superpowers where it's like, you know, Gilgamesh punches a lot in the comics. He punches a lot here. Kingo is not like the one who shoots energy blasts. He's almost kind of a ninja, I would say. He's been depicted a lot of different ways, and I think what they ended up doing with him recently is pretty clever. But anyway, so this one will be more straightforward to use his movie counterpart. The goal is to use his energy ball charging powers. The idea here is having a slightly above rate payoff, but also easy to predict as if the card is charging its power. So it would be a 2-cost 3 power with the text, if you play an on-reveal card here next turn, inflict -3 on a random enemy card. So yeah, you would be able, it's almost like Hawkeye, but it would be damage. It would be a negative effect that you would give your opponents. I think it'd be fun. I like anything where you do have to telegraph a big play. But yeah, he could be, obviously, then if he starts as a 2-cost 3 power and then you're throwing the -3, then he's a 6, and that's great. That could be very useful. I don't know how this would work if you could do 2 that next turn, if that would be 2 -3, so maybe that would work too. Maybe it'd be fun in a bounce deck. Next one, Ajak. She's the priest of the Eternal, so I want to play a card with her reference to powerful characters. So this would be 1 energy, 1 power, ongoing, +1 power for every 10+ power card on the board. So for you and your opponents, if you have a lot of really strong cards on the board, you are also very strong. So this could be a kind of interesting counterbalance against someone like a Hulk. Like your opponent has like 6 cards with 10 or more power on their side of the field. Now this is a 1/7. That's not bad. And then that's not even counting what you can control on your side of the board. Last one, Uranus. So I was not super familiar with him before the Axe event. I'd never heard of this character. I'm not sure. I have a feeling he'd probably been mentioned a couple of times, but he is Thanos' grandfather. He is basically, like, if you look at him, you're like, oh, he's the Thanos of Eternals, or he's the Apocalypse of Eternals. And I'll just read this. The big finale comes with an important character. I want to use the lore here with him only being able to be used for an hour, in this case, 1 turn. And that is how that works with the Axe event. They unleash Uranus to just destroy Mars, but he can only be out for an hour. And he still, within an hour, is able to kill like everybody. It's pretty cool. He's a cool looking guy too. Like, I like the design of this character, even though it does look a lot like Apocalypse. So the card would be a 6 energy, 16 power with the text returns to your hand at the end of this turn. So you could be used with War Machine to enter a ramped Professor X lane. It would also possibly help create companion cards that could counter something like Kitty Pryde. And then cards like Invisible Woman and Supergiant would negate the return since they were at the end of the game. So that'd be another one, very powerful, 6/16, but returns to your hand. So like, unless you play him very smart, doesn't work. I think that could be cool. I think those are all fun ideas. Like I said, I'm sure Second Dinner has something planned, and I imagine we'll maybe see these characters in a year. It's gonna be interesting because like next year, Marvel has a lot of stuff coming out. We're getting Thunderbolts, we're getting Brave New World, and maybe, we've already used our Thunderbolts, but maybe they'll try to line up another season of Thunderbolts characters so that they can line up with the movie. But maybe if they don't have a second Thunderbolt season, then we can get more Eternals. So again, this comes from someone who's been helping with writing some of my videos named Bernardo. They are at Bernardo Teles, Teles 8 on Twitter. So go ahead and follow them. Next month, we're doing Gwenpool, and we're doing all the Deadpool characters. So it's a lot of characters like Hydra Bob, who don't have a whole lot going on, versus characters like Gwenpool, where just explaining what her deal is complicated, but it's fun, it's worth it. I think people will like her. If you like these videos, like them, share them, all that stuff. And, if you know Marvel Snap people, tell them to put me in the creator program, because I applied a while ago. And frankly, I don't want to do it again, but I will apply again if they would like to put me in it. That would be cool. All right. Thanks, everybody. That's all I got. Stay safe. I'll see you next time.